Sean is recording. Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone to our public health and safety meeting for the month of August. And we're going to start this meeting with some staff updates. So I wanted to ask our manager to speak maybe to the emergency management team.
Yeah, well, the emergency management coordinator is on the call and he'll have a lot to say as well, but I just want to reiterate my thanks to the public works and fire and police personnel that were on duty yesterday during the tropical storm. We sustained some pretty significant flooding that involved closures of roads in the borough, management of traffic, and we also sustained some damage to our stormwater system on the 400 block of Conway Avenue, which is currently closed. We don't want any traffic going on that block of Conway Avenue till we've had the borough engineer out. We're trying to get him out tomorrow to assess the damage. That's a main trunk line of our stormwater conveyance system that, if you can imagine, collects basically all the upper watershed of the borough upstream from that. It's really an extensive network that spiders its way out of that location, and that sustained some damage and damaged the roadway. So we're going to have to assess that and probably have a conversation with everyone shortly about the costs of repair for that piece of infrastructure. We did have water in the Public Works building, but we didn't sustain any damage other than things getting wet. We were able to preemptively move the vehicles out of harm's way. But this was indeed a very significant flooding event. And we'll be meeting monthly with the emergency management team led by John, the emergency management coordinator. And one of our first tasks is going to be to update our flood response plan so we can take the lessons learned from this experience and from the 2 years experience we have under our belts now with Director of Public Works and Chief of Police to identify the resources we need, deploy them effectively, and then go through a recovery phase post-flooding, because this likely won't be our last major flooding event. That's all I have on that front.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Could we turn to the chief? Would you like to say anything by way of update on the emergency management team or the police?
Yeah, Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again, everybody, for having me on the call. I certainly appreciate it. It's always a great opportunity to update everybody on what we're doing with emergency management as well as the police. So in terms of emergency management, just to let everybody know, the Department of Public Safety, this is pursuant to our last emergency management meeting that we had. The Department of Public Safety in Eagleville has now stopped all situation reports related to the virus, and the EOC for that event has been broken down per their orders up there at Montgomery County Department of Public Safety. If anything needs to go back up, it will, but as of right now, all operations up there for this are suspended. So we've been getting some of our information and tracking it through the Pennsylvania Department of Health, getting information from Matt Scanlon from Narberth Ambulance, from the medical emergency side. The news overall is good. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we recently found effective Friday was that the overall hospitalizations due to the virus in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania were at 759. In the county, I think it was somewhere around the area of 59. So that was good news, and very few people were on ventilators at that time. In addition to that, again, as you know, as everybody knows, we have no congregate care facilities in the borough. That's been one of the fortunate things for us, as where most of these deaths are situated. Apparently, of the United States population, those that live in nursing homes represent about 0.6%. But if I'm not mistaken, they represent 45 to 50% of the deaths nationwide since the late winter, early spring, starting in Washington State. So the one thing that we talked about in our last emergency management meeting is now migrating towards our monthly, having a monthly meeting instead of a weekly meeting, since the event is somewhat under control. And we've met steady now, I think it was for 21 weeks pursuant to our last meeting since March. And everybody on the team did a great job. Everybody was very helpful. We always had the latest information. And I'm really proud of the team and what we've done and the information that we shared, not only in the weekly newsletter, but on the website itself. And thanks to Matt West on that, who really spearheaded a way to communicate effectively with that, exactly what we were doing. So I think overall we established that we can work together well as an emergency management team and a public safety team. This was kind of our teeth cutting ceremony. We got thrown into it, as everybody knows, and we're still dealing with it to a certain degree. But we're now looking at different things. One of the things Sean mentioned, Rob, will be looking at a flood response plan that we want to make sure that we have as a one-page amendment to our overall emergency management plan that Dave Wurtzel and Holly Bond-Farrell did together, which, by the way, is a great plan, outstanding with the communication trees. I've mentioned that before, and we're migrating a lot of that and using a lot of that stuff. But the one thing I did mention to the mayor as well as to Sean Metrick, that we need to have one-page addendums to that on how we respond to A, an active shooter, B, a flood emergency, C, it could be a train derailment. I think some of these things we mentioned before, to have a one-page cheat sheet on what to do and how to communicate. We saw a lot yesterday in terms of, just to talk about this a little bit. I know everybody has a lot of questions, and I'll be glad to answer them. There was a lot of challenges in Lower Merion Township yesterday. If you listen to PD10 on the scanner, there was a lot of water rescues throughout the borough, and they weren't all near waterways in the township. They weren't all near waterways. They were just some streets where the sewage systems and the drain systems clogged up, and the water, started to gather in an area, and it was a challenge, and they had some water rescues that were needed. We were able to, myself and Officer Vernaccio were able to shut down North Wynwood between the tunnel and Sabine pretty quickly and effectively because we felt that was our most vulnerable spot where we were going to have a possible water rescue if a car got stuck there. Obviously, second to what we refer to as the Narberth River that goes down Haverford Avenue between North Essex and North Wynwood Road, which Public Works and the police department already had blocked off. So we dealt with kind of 3 events yesterday, one early in the morning and then 2 subsequent later in the day, midday rather. And it was quite a challenge. But we did it. We worked together seamlessly as we kind of know each other's work ethic and prioritizations and skill sets. And I think we were lucky. We could have used many more officers to shut down many more streets. I did personally go up there and check the damage up in the 400 block of Conway. I agree now that after hearing Sean that it probably, considering some of the stuff that's underneath that I was unaware of, that it probably should be shut down to vehicular traffic until the the engineer can look at it further. But overall, it was a good job. But one of the challenges that I think that we have with it are communication, number one, having more personnel on hand. Yesterday's storm was very unusual. I talked to Officer Vernaccio, who's been here for 11 years. He said that's about the second worst one that he's seen during his tenure here. Overall, though, we probably need to, have some more after-action discussion pursuant to that event yesterday about what's needed and how we need to respond and what equipment and resources we need. Because I think we were very fortunate that we didn't have to affect the water rescue in the borough, considering the amount of flooding that we had. The other thing that I have a real serious concern, it happened right in front of me at the corner of Haverford and Dudley, that the ground becomes so saturated that the trees start to come down. And one came down yesterday in the 100 block of Dudley, hit the power lines, pulled those power lines all the way down onto 2 vehicles that were parked near that intersection. And then there was a telephone pole, the high tension line that was coming off the railroad embankment. And that started to pull down, almost leaning down all the way over Haverford Avenue, which it did not. It looked like it was as I was watching it, but it didn't, thank God. And, that was a real challenge for us because after the flooding was over, we thought we were going to have an easy day the rest of the day. And that happened in front of us, and it put us into a whole new position where we had to shut down Haverford Avenue, Dudley, contact PICO, handle the 911 responses, escort some people out of their homes. At first in the 100 block of Dudley and around that wanted to leave for necessities, food stores, things like that, and then come back. We just wanted to make sure that people were safe. Ed has confirmed that PICO, that was no longer charged, but a transformer came down, and it was very, very scary for a lot of people in that area. And that was the second tree that I saw come down yesterday. The other one happened behind the borough, and it hit the fence and it went over the dumpsters in the municipal lot. But I'll be glad to answer anybody's questions about it. I was out there the entire time. Yesterday was about a 12-hour day for me, and Officer Vernaccio, as well as Public Works. And we came together as a team, and I think the mark of success is we had no injuries, and we had nobody that had to be hospitalized as a result of the never-ending effects of what seemed to be a permanent storm at different times throughout the day.
Yeah, thank you, John. That was quite a storm, and another mark of success is all the borough vehicles are intact, right?
Yes, we have all of our police cars. I'm happy.
Okay, any questions from the committee about the flooding event in particular, or how to prepare in the future?
No, just thank you so much for the work that you all did yesterday to not only respond to emergencies, but to prevent emergencies by blocking off certain roads and moving vehicles ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with Fran Dixon, our fire chief, about the water rescues, and he's spoken with our committee about that before. So I'm sure, like you're saying, that now that you're planning to do an addendum, that'll be part of that and coordinated with Fran. So thank you for that.
I mean, it's not such a far-fetched concept. There was a water rescue that happened yesterday at the corner of Penn Road and Haverford Road in front of the Bed Bath & Beyond shopping center. Somebody had to be rescued from a vehicle right there, which is only a couple blocks off the borough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's right. So, in the last conversation I had with Fran about it, it was more hypothetical, but we can see what's happening to our climate, and we do need to prepare. Thank you, John. So while we're on updates here with police, I wonder, John, together with the mayor, if you could speak to the policy review process that the mayor has undertaken, and together with Matt West's help, I understand that the policies are online.
Yes, well, that's in progress, Rob. And actually, to give everybody an update pursuant to the email that I sent out to this team, that we now have about 12 directives that have been that have either been fully revised or have been introduced as new directives. Some very important ones: use of force, no bias policing, sexual harassment and retaliation. Some members of this committee had some recommendations to bake some language in there for some of those policies, which was included. And the one thing I'm very confident in is the consistency with these directives that we will post. The one thing I mentioned before is the Pennsylvania Chiefs Association has basically a package that you can purchase for a minimal price for a borough to put all these police policies in place by the stroke of a pen. I fundamentally disagree with that, and I think I explained why. That all directives and all police policies should be tailored to the community which the police department serves. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So I don't like that. I think that is kind of the cheat way myself. I think that we should have policies that are not only be robust and effective for our community, but that they're going to have long-standing, protracted duration. that just need to be updated as needed with new dates, new information, but that can stand the test of time, that that are consistent. Also, the one thing I did with the directives that we will be posting probably very soon, if not by Friday, the 7th, that there is consistency in the language from directive to directive, that the one directive does not contradict another directive in terms of content. And we also have some added responsibilities where the anticipated new position of police sergeant will have some accountability and responsibility within those policies to make sure that that newly promoted position is serving properly and being held responsible for his or her role with making sure there's compliance areas being met in the department. So that language is all consistent. I'm very proud of the ones that we're about to post up. We're going to keep continuing it. For right now, I have a new policy that's under construction, which is our social media policy. So these are some real important things. I think we've tackled about 3 or 4 ones that you're going to see posted, by Friday. I've been working with Matt West. We met briefly last week, right before I sent the email out. We want to make sure that it's user friendly once it goes to the website, that people can manage it and they can digest the information. If they have any questions, they can send it to us. These are things I think if they're shared, it's certainly going to go a long way for transparency, which is going to be a plus for the department. Overall, I think that we're going to see more improvement in that area. We're going to take some of our older directives and we're going to continue to build upon this foundation, this boilerplate that we're going to have. And you're going to see even more information, which is going to explain even what our police officers do on a day-to-day basis. And that broader understanding, I think, will lend to a lot of community support, in addition to the community support that we have here already, which we're very proud of because we are a community-connected department. So I think that it's going to speak volumes once it goes out there, and as we progress and we move forward with this work in progress, that people are going to really be able to connect to some of the things that we're doing in the police department. The one thing I would like to offer to everybody on this committee, as well as council, is let's revisit the ride-along program where elected officials come back out with the officers and you see all the moving parts and the things that we face every day, and the touch points that have to be completed on every shift, and some of the unpredictable things that happen on any given tour of duty where an officer works here in the borough, and the dangers that are encountered. Not that we would endanger any ride-along person, but I think it's great when we had that program before. I'd like to revisit it again because I really believe that it's beneficial and it really helps a broader understanding, amongst the team.
Thank you, John. I agree that this kind of review and transparency builds community trust. And I thank you for doing this with the mayor. Andrea, would you like to add anything?
No, it's pretty much been covered by the chief, but I've been working with the chief to try and get these policies, public and available for everybody to review. It's going to be an ongoing project. It's an ongoing project as time goes by and circumstances change. We update, we tweak, and we make it up to current acceptable standards at all times.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to encourage my council colleagues, not just Mona and Bob, of course, but all of council to review these policies when they are posted on the 7th or whenever that is. Because the onus is on us as elected officials to know these policies, especially the use of force policies, and to review and comment if we see fit. So thank you both, John and Andrea. Okay, while we're on the staff updates, go ahead, Mona. Yeah.
Question or no?
Go ahead, Mona.
Okay. Thank you so much for all of your work on this, Chief Gallagher and Mayor Deutsch. Quick question: are we, when we put up new policies from the borough or other policies, sometimes we review them by John Walco. What's the current thinking on how many of these or how often they should be reviewed by our solicitor? Or
Mona, can I answer that question for you? I think I think in the interest of transparency, there's no issues with it at all. I think we should have no reservations to share it with John whatsoever. In fact, pursuant to this meeting, what I'd like to do is to share the directives that we have ready with this committee, that you can see what the final version is like on each of those 12 directives that are ready. Now, there is one directive in there that's called the 1099 code that we may not be able to post that. And you're going to see why. You're going to see that it's an officer safety issue. And if that information became public, that officers, their safety could be in jeopardy. So that's one directive we may not be able to post, or we have to post it in redacted form. But it's going to be very self-evident. It's going to be explanatory once you read it yourself. And it's a very short directive. It's not long. You're going to have a grasp of it right away. And it's written very straightforward. I revised that directive myself. I don't think there's any reservations that any of us should have about sharing it with John Walko, especially the ones that are big takeaways, like use of force, no bias policing, sexual harassment. Those are things that should be benchmarked, in my opinion, a little bit with John, just to make sure that we're touching all the important points that need to be covered. But I'm very proud of these directives that we've done so far. A lot of labor-intensive effort has gone into them. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with everybody on the committee, is share those directives with everybody here on the call, and just add John Walko as well, to have these reviewed before they're posted. And these are in their final version. Feel free to give me a call, because you may see some things in there that you had questions about that may have not made it to the final cut, but there is adequate, appropriate explanation as to why it may have not, made it to the final version. But many of the things that were recommended, not only Mona, but by the mayor and others, have in fact made it to those final versions of those directives. And I appreciate your effort and your interest, because that's what encourages me, that, elected officials have interest in the engaged conversation, and they want to learn exactly what we do for a better understanding and how they can respond to their constituents and inquiries from people. And I think overall it's a good program. I think we're going in the right direction. Yeah, I have no problem with it. That's my intention. I hope everybody's here is okay with it. I do have the mayor on the call, and if she had any objections, by all means, Mayor.
No, that it certainly seems appropriate to send it out and have John Walko look at it. I have no problem with that, and it certainly seems appropriate.
Okay, let's go ahead with that, John. We'll look for your email from you and the mayor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Rob, and I appreciate everybody's time for giving me an opportunity again to talk about this, because this has been an important work in progress for us. And it's been, a lot of conversation between myself and the mayor, and reviews and comments and criticisms and recommendations and suggestions, and all of it appreciated. And I'm very proud that we have a robust, posting that's going to be anticipated within a short period. And I think you're going to be very proud of these directives and the way they're written. My fault is I'm kind of a perfectionist with grammar and consistency and writing. And I think that maybe even, to an extent where it's detrimental in terms of time. But you're going to see that these things are well written. They're well crafted. They're comprehensive. They're contemporary, and they're organized extremely well. And I hope to.
We'll hold you to that. We have a couple teachers here on the call, so.
Well, I'm a product of Catholic school, so it's this is the way we've been taught ever since we were young. So I can tell you that I think you're going to be very pleased. In addition to that, I'm open to any suggestion. Anybody has any calls or any inquiries, feel free to give me a buzz.
Thank you so much, John. So before we move to the discussion items, which we have next on our agenda, Sean, I wonder, could I ask you very briefly just to, we had talked about this before, but just to kind of update the public, if the public were to see, for example, trash cans that are being left out full of trash and it's not on a trash day, would you be willing to just kind of update the general public? Is that something that could be cited? under our trash code,
Yeah.
as a public health concern?
Yeah, the borough has a solid waste ordinance, and one of the key things in that solid waste ordinance is you're supposed to put your trash out within 24 hours of it being collected, and that's the only moment we should really be. Your neighbors and the borough should be seeing your trash. Otherwise, it needs to be removed from the right of way and kept in a covered container. So if we have problems like that, you can report it two ways. You can go to our website to to report an issue. There's a link right on our homepage. It takes you to a page where you'd fill out a form and send it into a shared inbox that our office manager and other borough staff have access to, or alternately, you could call the borough office's general number and speak to the office manager, or not choose an option, and you would default to that that person and leave a message or speak directly to that person about the issue, and we can start a work order on that issue. So we would have to, just like anything else, we'd have to observe and document the infraction. And if we do typically observe and document an infraction of any of our codes, we typically give the person an opportunity to voluntarily correct it. So I'm assuming that's how we would proceed in that regard.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I know there's some residents that have been concerned about trash and rodents, so I wanted to make sure the public is aware of that process.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's move to the discussion items we have on the agenda. So we have police training, then we have climate action plan, and then with your blessing, I would like to add two items that have kind of come to us late in the day. One is a possible mask ordinance for the downtown, and another is just a quick review of the downtown barricade situation, how we can best support the businesses. If that, we would add that as the third and fourth item. Okay, so let's just start with the police training. Just, because police training is something that the council can assign to the police, I wanted to be sure it's on our radar as a committee. If there is some kind of training that we would like to see the mayor and the chief consider, of course, we trust the chief's professional judgment, but we also want to take seriously our responsibility as elected officials, and that this is one of our responsibilities to assign training. So this is, I guess, just the beginning of a conversation. I'm not expecting to really come to any conclusion tonight on this, but I did want to invite the conversation. And I thought maybe we could start with Bob and Mona. If you have any thoughts on police training, or if you think that we should make any recommendations in this regard to our other council colleagues.
So, yeah, I have a million questions, but I'll try and limit them. I want to start by saying that I think, since Chief Gallagher has been with us, we've had a very good track record at very little use of force in our borough. So I think that shows the professionalism of our officers as well as Chief Gallagher's leadership. I have heard from residents that in the past, there were many complaints about Narberth, certain Narberth police officers who are no longer with us. So I think we've been improving. But I'd also, just looking in general, I'm wondering if, I think, with the current state of looking at issues with use of force in the country, and again, let me reiterate, that's not in our current police department. I still think it's important to give our officers all of the professional training that they need when they have to respond to very difficult situations. And in addition, I think you know, some type of anti-discrimination, anti-bias training is important, as much as I feel it's also important for borough elected officials and other non-uniform staff as well. So I guess, you know, so one thing is I think it's important to look at, maybe there's a possibility that we could review when we might be able to get those types of trainings. I know that Chief Gallagher, you had scheduled police officers for de-escalation training, and that was paused because of the pandemic. So I'm wondering when that might be able to happen again. I also know that you requested access to virtual trainings for the officers so that they could do other types of trainings, like, you know, non-biased policing and things like that. So I guess my initial question is just, how does it look in terms of those things lining up in the near future?
Well, to respond to your question, actually very good. We are now, all the officers now have usernames and passwords to the Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network. So that is already in progress. We're ahead of the curve on that, Mona. And we're actually using that training network right now to satisfy our Municipal Police Officer Education and Training Commission requirements, which are annual. Because right now some of our in-person training has been suspended because of the virus, as you know. And I just sent out the you know, our status of command report to everybody via email that gives everybody an update in that area under those headlines of certifications, equipment, and training. But I think overall, you're going to see a return back to Montgomery County Community College. I think they will be having the in-person certification trainings again. We are required, as you know, to go through annual use of force training with the Lower Merion Police Department and tactics training. De-escalation is at the forefront of their policy, as well as our newly revised policy. And they complement each other, and they work on that in training as well. So I'm pretty confident with that. However, there's other options and alternatives that are out there, and I'm going to be looking for different choices that we have. Some of them are going to come at no cost to the borough. They're going to be offered free. I'll give you an example, Mona. The Art of De-Escalation trainer was being offered by our work comp provider, Delaware Valley Trust. And unfortunately, as you know, it got sidelined and put on the back burner. We're going to try to get that back online. They have not sent us notification when they're revisiting that right now. I'll try to get an update for you by next meeting, or maybe even sooner if I can get some word this week. But overall, I think there's different choices that we should make. Number one, we have a policy now, which is called no bias policing. So in addition to training that we're going to have that is going to be formal, I think there's also going to be some informal training that I want to conduct with the officers myself, reviewing some of the policies that we have to make sure that we emphasize that the compliance is expected. So those are just some of the things that are going on in my head. But the other thing that I would like to explore is there's classes that we could take for cultural awareness, ethnic sensitivity. You know, those things are important. They've been in policing for a long period of time. I've gone through these classes when I was a young rookie officer in Philadelphia in the early 90s. And coming on in 89, there was just to let everybody know, there was a dramatic shift in policing post 1991 with Rodney King. De-escalation started to become all the rage. Intervention that was appropriate became the order of the day. You know, ethnic sensitivity, cultural awareness, no bias policing, avoidance of profiling in policing became, you know, a lot of themes and a lot of the trainings that police officers across the entire nation went through. Now, again, it's based on the practitioner. I think there's some officers there that internalize that and they try to do a good job and they wear their hearts on their sleeve. I think, unfortunately, there's other officers within any organization. You're going to find people, you know, just didn't want to do it, or they dismissed it, or they just didn't take it that seriously. I think that's the risk you run. It's dependent on the personality. I think that's why you have to provide leadership, direction, and control of a department. You know, which I try to do, and which the sergeant's going to be expected to do once he or she is promoted, and going to be held accountable in order to ensure, you know, that people know that we take things seriously and there is compliance. The one thing I would like to say about these officers is that we have 5 good officers here. They've done a good job. I've been here for almost 27 months. I can't say enough about them. For instance, I'll give you an example. Officer Dan Dutton and Officer Mike Vernaccio, considering the challenges that we've had here, not only with the virus, but also with the protest and the civil unrest and the disorder that we've seen every day in the news that did not touch Narberth. The 3 of us, namely those 2, were able to hold the borough on lockdown with the SEPTA Police Department and the Amtrak Police Department as assistants, and we didn't have any of those incidents here. They've done a tremendous job. I know that there's been some incidents in the past that have happened and have caused concern for the taxpayers, the residents, and the business owners here in the community. That's not the same department. We are not the same department. We are completely different. And we are professional, and we make sure that we provide the adequate training and the guardrails that are needed to make sure that not only we have a department that is ethical, but also that one that follows a moral compass, that wants to treat others the way they would want their family members treated by police in their community. And I think that's important. I think if you lose your humanity in policing, you don't belong in this job. That's my opinion, professionally and personally. This is not a job for everybody. It just simply is not. I've been doing it since I was 20 years old, and now I have a great opportunity, and I'm grateful every day to serve the great people in the borough. It's an honor to do it at the rank of chief, and I put my best foot forward every day doing it. And the officers follow suit with that. They do that. They see the type of leadership here that's expected, the performance-driven objectives that we have, as well as the communication skills that are needed and the community-connected department that is requested and required by a community like Narberth. So I think it's a different department. It's a department that everybody in the borough should be proud of, especially elected officials. I think that these calls to defund the police are silly. I really do. I think there should be a reinvestment in police. We're talking about an important category right now that's on the agenda: training. That's why defunding is just not it shouldn't be entertained. We should reinvest in training, defend police officers who are doing a good job. These officers that we have do a great job. I think overall there's room for improvement. We can certainly do that through training and professional development. But I think, that what we've done, what we've demonstrated here for the past 27 months, and the mayor has echoed this, is we are not what we were before. And we are very proud to say that the Narberth Police Department, whatever was good in the past, we took it with us. Whatever was bad in the past, we left it behind. And now what we have is a professional department which is standardized and provides good quality police service to everybody in the borough.
Thank you, John. And we do recognize that, I think, all of us on the council. This is a different department thanks to the leadership of the mayor and the chief and the senior members of council. And the borough manager. I mean, it's been a team effort, so we really do appreciate it. And we want to be proactive going forward. We want to think outside the box. We want to consider possible training that may be helpful. And so as a committee, I'd just like us to keep that on our docket and give it some thought. Bob, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this issue.
I do. I wanted to chime in with and appreciate Mona for bringing so many of these issues to the forefront, and also to you, John, for all of the experience that you have and your awareness of these issues. And I think it's the reason we hired you to be our chief, knowing that you would bring that kind of awareness and sensitivity to the job. But I do have a question for you, John.
Sure.
Given the emphasis on compliance that you've noted is really required of the officers, how would we know? And I know that we have a high level of trust with our officers. None of us have any complaints about our officers. We're proud of our department at this time. But I do want to know, how are the officers held accountable for compliance with maintaining a no bias kind of perspective and a keen awareness that it's important for them not to be profiling? And how are they held accountable to be very careful in the way they use language with one another about the residents or about the way in which different people in our community might be behaving. You know, how are they held to a high standard of not making up stories about what they're seeing going on,
Sure.
and that they're staying effective? And I think that, to me, that's the importance of cultural awareness and ethnic sensitivity and anti-bias training, is that you end up with a force that's not inclined to just make stuff up about the people there, say stopping or observing on the street, but are really are watching to see what's actually happening, more in the way that, you know, reporters are trained to observe what's actually going on and not just make up stories about what's going on. So that's my question, is how actually do you hold an officer accountable? How many opportunities do they have to correct, say, an explicit, say, racial comment or you know, misplaced idea? Anyway, that's my main question.
Well, Bob, it's a good one, and just to start off with response is that, you know, a discipline always must be progressive. It's got to be corrective in nature. It cannot be punitive. It cannot be personal. A discipline is designed to bring officers back into the fold to make sure that they're part of the team. Now, ultimately, sometimes an officer can't be disciplined. It depends on the circumstance, where positive discipline doesn't work, and it's got to resort to negative discipline, and that could be an official reprimand or suspension in compliance with the civil service regulations that we have in this borough with our commission. As long as it follows the guidelines. We certainly do have a contract with the officers that we have to follow. I can tell you that some of the things you described, from what I've seen, they're innate in the officers. They've been raised the right way. They have great examples, great families. They're good people. They do truly want to treat other people like they're members of their own family. And that's personally what I've seen. But again, yes, there must be leadership. There must be direction. There must be control and guidance in order to provide risk management and limit exposure for the borough as an organization, you know, in terms of a wayward act by a police officer. It's not a perfect world, and human beings, police officers are human beings, and they are not perfect. They could be having a bad day. They could be under stress. They could have a situation at home which they carry to work. But I try to emphasize on them that personal detachment will clarify a professional train of thought. Don't bring your problems at home or how you feel at home to your workplace. Just make sure you come in and do your job and you act professionally and civilly and decent. And also try not to bring your problems from work back home, because that's not fair to your family either. So I think one of the things that we do also to the officers' benefit is that, you know, we try to be open in communication. You know, we do have, you know, as in our program, options and alternatives for employees' assistance if they have any stress or any concerns, personal issues. They know that my door is always open. I can talk to them at any time, provide assistance. The one thing that I think that it's important in your question, Bob, is how do we respond to that consistency? I think transparency is one of the big things of what we're doing. As of right now, we have a monthly report that is generated for everybody to see. And within that, there's a category that says complaints against police. So you can see if there was any complaints filed within that given month or a year, and people can have a question about it. And we can go back and we can look at that file and we can find out what the remedy was, what happened, what were the results of that investigation. You know, and some of that can be shared. There's a certain right to know act that can always be invoked legally. But we try to be as transparent as possible and put that information out there. We recently had a question from Councilman Fred Bush that was funneled through the mayor to me about a complaint against police that was noted on our monthly report. And that's the reason why we do the monthly reports, to make sure that that transparency is there, not only in terms of you know, offenses reported to the community, but also police performance. And within that police performance category, you see on the bottom complaints against police, lower marine coverage, police overtime, auto accidents that police were involved in. That's the step. That's the key. That transparency where people can start to inquire based on what they're seeing. So with that in mind, I think that is probably an important part, that we now are very open about what we do in the Narberth Police Department. And I was able to, in particular on that situation, I was able to give the mayor a response that she could take it back to Mr. Bush. And as it turned out, it did not involve a police officer at all. It involved our parking enforcement officer. But we include that. And that's a complaint. Complaints against police are all police personnel. That includes police officers, and that includes non-sworn personnel like our school crossing guards, as well as our parking enforcement officer.
Is it fair to say, John, that if there were a complaint and there were a reprimand of the police, that the mayor would have an awareness that the standard procedure would be that you would report that to the mayor, so that there would be, on the civilian side of things, the mayor as our elected official would know that that was going on?
Oh, Bob, if there was formal discipline according to the civil service rules and regulations for the community, the mayor would have to know as the oversight for the department. If there was a suspension, yes, absolutely. And the reasons and the facts and the circumstances behind it, she would have to be made fully aware.
What about a verbal reprimand or a complaint?
In fact, Bob, I was aware when Fred came to me, I just had to clarify with the chief the incident that he was being referenced in the report, and I had been made aware of that, and so I was aware. In addition, understand that there are multiple levels that a citizen can go to if they have a complaint against the police. They can come to me, they can come to the chief, they can go to the Human Relations Commission. We now have multiple levels of oversight in the event somebody does not feel comfortable going to one level or another. There's multiple levels of oversight of what is going on within the force and ways to address it.
Yeah, and as a reminder to our neighbors, those complaints are filed in the monthly police report in the business packet, which is made available publicly through the borough website. So
I
that's.
just want to thank John for such a thorough answer to even the questions I didn't ask, but you went about 5 layers deeper than I was asking, and I really appreciate that, John, so much, and I appreciate your transparency with the process.
And Bob, to your point about reprimands, the answer is yes, the mayor would have to know about an official reprimand. We've provided counseling to officers. Myself and Sean Metrick, we have to have a witness in the room, as we always do, because even a counseling, even a professional counseling that is positive in nature, whether negative or positive, really, for that matter, should be witnessed in terms of good management procedure. And Sean has acted as that. We try to keep elected officials out of that as much as possible, so it's handled by professional staff to reduce mitigation and exposure, for elected officials, including the mayor. But yes, by all means, and the mayor knows this. Her and I have a great relationship. If it was an official reprimand and suspension, to really stress that and emphasize that, there's without question, the mayor would have to be brought up to speed on not only the final result, Bob, but just about every step of the way, because it would be so important for her to know in such a small organization that she provides oversight for.
So I want to just reiterate that as a committee, we can kind of return to this again next month or the month after, this question of training, and we can discuss it with our council colleagues. But any recommendation, of course, would be made in partnership with the mayor and the chief. So it's a collaborative effort. So
I just wanted to add that I'm really in favor, as a council person, of Mona's idea of doing an anti-bias training and participating, having council members participate, and along with staff and officers, if there is an opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, that is something that I discussed with Cindy as chair of FNA, and I believe she has a plan that she's discussed with Mona, I think. Mona, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
It's still in the works. I need to meet with, Sean and I have talked about it, and Sean is definitely in favor of trainings for staff. And I need to talk with Aaron about it, and we had a meeting scheduled, but it had to be canceled. So we're still in the works. I do have one other thing, just to throw it out there to think about for the future. I think, it seems that police officers in general, and I think in Pennsylvania, I don't, maybe this could be a question someone could answer, but I don't think there's very many hours of in-service trainings required per year for police officers compared to, say, some other professions. And I think that in Narberth, we should consider going above and beyond that to give our police officers what they need. So I'm wondering if at some point in the future, Mayor Deutsch and Chief Gallagher if you think it might be a good idea to take a look at the types of calls that police officers respond to and think about what types of trainings they might need. So for example, substance abuse is increasing, mental health issues are increasing, and police officers often have to respond to calls that maybe were not necessarily, so frequent in the past. So I would love for our officers to have, whatever training they need to feel equipped to, whether they're addressing a call that has to do with mental illness or domestic violence intervention or substance abuse or drug addiction or self-care, like what other things we could provide to them in terms of self-care, self-defense, so I'm wondering if that might be something that you think would be a good idea for us to think about what we could provide in addition to our officers in the future. And I see that our current budget allotted this year was for $5,000 for police trainings. I appreciate that Chief Gallagher was looking at cheaper, like he found a free option for de-escalation training. So we could maybe add other trainings that are free or low cost, but I think it's something that also as a council, we should consider, maybe in the future, increasing the budget to allow our officers to get the trainings that they need to feel well equipped to all the types of calls they need to respond to.
Well, Mona, if you say an increase in training, I'm going to increase in budget for training. I'll take it. So I'm right there with you. I just did want to add, Mona, though, there is a lot of training that is required annually from the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission, as well as the requirements from our partnership with Lower Merion. But we're already kind of ahead of the curve. I just want to let you know, in terms of mental health training, our officers are trained and certified as crisis intervention specialists, CIS. Every one of our officers. Kelly Lynn was ahead of the curve. She did it first when she worked at Building 50 before she was a police officer. And then we had the idea that we were going to give it to every other officer. All the officers right now are currently trained in that. Again, as you mentioned, they were going to get trained in the art of de-escalation. Officer Belfie has already gone through art of de-escalation training with the Pennsylvania Association of Boroughs. So there are things that we've already done. In addition to that, the 4 of the 5 officers went through social networking and investigative training techniques that we sponsored ourselves. 3 of those officers did it for free. 1 had to pay. It was a different format that was provided. But I'm always open for more training and more professional development outside the department. In-service training is always a plus. It's a key to what I refer to as professional maturity in a police officer, regardless of status, whether a veteran or a new officer. And I think those things are all positive. And I'm glad that people speak this way, because training always adds not only to performance and to customer satisfaction, because that's what it is. It's a customer service driven profession, but it also lends to confidence in the officer himself or herself. They feel more confident in providing the information and the job that they do every day. When they have that training, the confidence is built, the resume is built, the foundation is there. And, with that training, that comes real life experience. And when the 2 of them meet, it's a real positive morale builder. When officers can actually use training and put it into motion. The one thing I would like to mention before I know that we're going to move on to other comments. I don't want to take up too much time, but I would like to mention 2 things that are very pivotal on that status of command report for everybody on the call that I think is an example of how good this department is doing. Our department is now in full compliance with 2020 year-to-date data requirement for Pennsylvania Uniform Crime Reporting. That is huge. We were non-compliant when I first came here. Then it was an annual requirement. It is now a year-to-date monthly data requirement. And our record management system interacts effectively after we have done some state-of-the-art updates with technology, with Central Square Technologies, which is our contracted vendor for Metro Alert and Visual Alert, our record management system, along with the platform from Pennsylvania Uniform Crime Reporting. And I would like to mention that our liaison from Pennsylvania Crime Reporting, who I've talked to quite a bit recently, we are, I'm proud to say this, we in the borough with our Uniform Crime Reporting are error-free as compared to other boroughs and other townships which have had multiple kickbacks and errors. We now average about 8 to 14 reportable jobs to the Pennsylvania Uniform Crime Reporting platform, and we are error-free. We've had no kickbacks whatsoever, not only for 2019, but also for 2020 year-to-date data so far. I think that is a true mark of success for our department. In addition to that, we received a 3-year clean certification since our last meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee, pursuant to the audit that was performed by the Pennsylvania State Police on this department on Friday, January 31st. A 3-year certification. That is outstanding. Before, when I first came here, this department had its certification, in fact, revoked. The officers did not have CLEAN, which is the Commonwealth Law Enforcement Network, communication network. I don't remember. Everything is acronyms in law enforcement. I apologize to everybody. But I'm trying to just really emphasize that these are things that were really jeopardizing the future of this department when I first came here. And now we are ahead of the curve, and our certifications are outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. It's really so much work to move this department forward. So in the interest of time, I think we need to move ahead to our next item. I would suggest we try to wrap up in the next 15 minutes if we can, because we're used to an hour meeting, but we don't have our council meeting, so we have a little extra time. But why don't we move ahead to the second item, which is climate action planning. And we do have the climate action plan that has been drafted and shared with the committee. I know that Sean, as manager, will be meeting with the EAC to review aspects of it. But one thing I want to review is the timeline. My hope is that as a committee, we would be in a position to approve the plan and recommend it to the council sometime this fall. And, you know, that might be September, might be October, but I wanted to, I guess, check in with Bob and Mona if you think that's a reasonable timetable, Sean as well. Do you think that's something we can do? I mean, the plan is in really good shape, but it just needs, you know, we as a committee need some time to digest it, and Sean and the staff need some time. So I don't know, Sean, do you think
I kind of feel like we should defer to the staff, but at the same time begin digesting it and having discussions with the staff. So maybe, let's say, after Sean meets with that, you know, and reviews the concerns he has with them, that then we discuss, we talk it through with Sean, those issues.
Okay.
Go from there, just proposing as the next step.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, you know, I'm just looking ahead to our next meeting will be the first week in September.
Can that
Sean,
happen by then?
Yeah, Sean, what do you think? Do you think, would you have time to meet with the AC, you know, whatever input you want to have on the plan before our next meeting, or would you rather wait till October?
My intention was I'm going to need to carve out about 4 hours, half a day, just for this, to read it through. And that's not going to happen this week, but I can carve out some time next week. And that was the extent of my involvement. Excuse me. I was going to read it through and provide my comments back to the people drafting the climate action plan. And if there's issues that come up there, then we could be prepared to talk about it at September's. I'm going to pull up my calendar here. That would be the 2nd, September 2. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. So So thank you, Sean. So that puts us in a position then as a committee to discuss the plan that's, pretty much complete.
Does everybody have that link to the plan that's on council? I'm not sure. You all do? Okay.
This committee at least does, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's plan on that. So September 2nd, as a committee, we could discuss the plan, and we could decide then if we're ready to approve it and recommend it to the council, or if we want to take an additional month to, tweak and amend what we're seeing.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. So one of the things that's, the number one strategy on the borough operations side that's being recommended in the plan is to switch the electricity provider. This is something that, I've discussed with Sean already, and I believe Sean and Matt are already exploring that possibility. So, one of the other recommendations was to switch the street lights, which of course is already in motion. So, so the staff is very much kind of on top of this already, but it's just a matter of making sure that one document action plan is something we're all comfortable with. Okay, so just a couple other items on the climate action plan. In speaking with Jesse Lytle, chair of the EAC, he has suggested that membership in the ICLEI organization would be of considerable value to the EAC and to the borough going forward. That's a $500 annual membership, and we had this for free in the first year through that PADEP grant program, and that ICLEI organization provided the software. So we now have our carbon inventory, greenhouse gas inventory in the software, and we can continue using the software for, I think, another 10 months or so at no cost. But looking ahead, the EAC is recommending that we become a member of ICLEI, because then we have ongoing access to the software and to the greenhouse gas database. And this allows us to track our progress. It also gives us access to the ICLEI consultants. It's a nonprofit that serves municipalities throughout the country, and they can give their advice on how to achieve our carbon neutral goals. So that's something that I'm hearing from the chair of the EAC, and we could discuss as a committee if it's something we would support.
Rob, I certainly support that. I think that's a good use of money, and it puts us into the other Pennsylvania towns that are members of ICLEI include Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, as well as several other small, like Lewisburg Borough, and other small communities. And it seems like it would support the work going over the next 10 to 20 years. It would support our resolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a meeting with Sean and with the ICLEI representative and the EAC, and the software is really quite powerful. It allows you to forecast over 10, 20-year time horizons how you would reduce your carbon emissions based on certain strategies. So the forecasting tool is powerful, and it's a way to ensure that we actually meet our goal that we voted on unanimously.
And you said the 500 is also entitles us to consultants as well?
Yes, that's one of the benefits. It's not only access to the software, but also to the consultants. And we met with one of the consultants, Sean and I, and she is available. The consultants are available to member municipalities, and because they're a nonprofit, it's a very affordable way of getting that kind of expertise.
Sure. I think it's a worthy investment. We're already seeing the effects of more severe storms and flooding, and probably the damage to our storm water system is cost more than that alone, perhaps, you know, the repairs. And I think we do all have a responsibility to figure out how we can help to alleviate the worst effects of climate action. And I think that's a tiny investment for that. So.
Okay, all right, well, good. I guess then as a committee, it's something we could recommend to council in this budgeting cycle. Okay, the only other item related to the EAC is the EV charging stations, and we had that listed on the agenda as a possible action item. And Sean, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Well, it's pretty easy. We went back, we looked at the numbers, and we're in budget to do the installation as we resolved with what NIDA has committed and what the borough's already committed to install the EV charging stations, one at North Essex Avenue, the 100 block of North Essex, and the other one being at the Borough Hall station. What we were able to do with our round of quotes was to get a quote for the installation of 2 EV charging stations in the municipal parking lot near the library, and that total number came in at around $8,500 to $8,700. I don't have the exact number in front of me, which is about a $6,000 savings over installation in the 2 locations that council had authorized the borough to go seek out DEP partnership funding for. The only question to the committee and possibly to council is if you want to change your mind and put charging stations behind the library, we would have to resubmit to DEP for new vouchers in those locations. And there's no guarantee that we would get those, because I don't know what the status is right now of the vouchers. We got the vouchers back in March. So it's sort of a, do you want to delay this and apply for a couple more vouchers and to move it down to the library, or do we go ahead with as we had originally authorized it, knowing that we are in budget? So that's the question. When we had first talked, Rob, I was wondering if the question might be we needed more money to do the installation, and that's not it. We have enough between the grant, the voucher, the rebate from PICO, the money from NIDA, and what council had authorized through its CIP to cover the costs.
Oh, as is.
As is.
Oh, okay. So we could go ahead without additional funding.
Yep.
Or we could move one of the stations behind Borough Hall and save some money.
Yeah.
Assuming we could get the voucher. That's a bit of a risk.
Assuming we could reapply for the vouchers and we would still get them.
Okay, well, let's open this up to discussion of the committee. Bob, do you have a thought on this?
No, I just think we should stay the course with this project and follow through.
Okay, the EAC, recommendation was this original plan of these 2 locations, and they had a rationale for that. They wanted one location to be closer into the neighborhood for residents to access and to encourage residents to buy an EV as their next car. If both stations are behind Borough Hall, that may be less of an incentive for residents to make the shift. So this is part of the logic of the EAC recommendation. There was also a thought that it may attract customers to the business district by having that second location on Essex.
There's no better way to test their assumptions than to do it. And I think now's as good a time as any.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, I think that as Sean is saying, there's no guarantee that we could get the voucher approved. It's a whole process to reapply. And there's a certain number of vouchers, and I'm not sure if they've maxed out yet or not. So, Mona, do you have a thought on this?
I agree that we should stay the course because I don't, the staff has already spent a significant amount of time on this, and I don't think that they should have to go back and redo the work unless the staff thinks there's a good reason to do it. I'm all for advertising, that it makes sense to start getting electric vehicles in the future. So I think I like the idea of the location for marketing or whatever you would call that. I don't know. Public education. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I agree with the original argument to place them downtown for a visible location, and there was some back and forth between members of the EAC about that location on Essex as opposed to some others, and that I feel like those decisions were already made. So I don't want to revisit decisions that are made, but I just wanted to make sure, since it was something discussed at the council level, that you all are aware that we did revisit the bids. We don't need extra funding authorization to do the project as we were, as council has decided it would be done. But I wanted to make sure you had that information. So if there's no desire to change our course, I can check with the council president on this too, and we can just go ahead as we had initially intended, if that's okay.
Okay, yes, I think that's what we would like to do.
Okay.
Mayor, unless you have any objection.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so yeah, I would like to do that. Move ahead as planned. And thank you, Sean, for all the work in arranging for this.
You're welcome.
I know it's been a considerable amount of time to file these various grant applications, first with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and then with PICO.
Mm-hmm.
And then we appealed to NIDA for additional funds.
Yep.
So it's been, a time-intensive process. And now we're in a position to kind of close the deal.
And we were able to obtain over $22,000 of partner grant funding through those efforts. So it was time well spent.
Yeah, no, this was a successful grant application. So thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, so we have two more items, and I guess I'm already at my my 7:45 mark here. Well, let's see what we can do. We have this mask ordinance that's just kind of come to us late in the day, and it's something that I would like us as a committee to consider. Our solicitor has developed some language that I think I've shared with the committee, and we're starting to see these ordinances come in. State College just passed theirs last night, and it was put in place at some point today. And so obviously State College, they're anticipating an influx of students and they wanted to act quickly. But we also have colleges that are planning to open in person and schools reopening potentially. This being decided as we speak by the school board. So this is a moment, I think, when we should decide if we want to also do a mask ordinance or not. And as a committee, we should discuss this a bit now so that we could, if we choose, recommend it to the council at our next meeting, which would be later this month, rather than wait until our September council meeting. So this is a time-sensitive question, so I think we should take some time with it now.
I'm happy to speak to it.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I appreciate whoever initiated that, and it might have been the mayor. I believe she's in favor of this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea. I'm not.
I think the problem with the mask ordinance has been that there's been very little way to enforce it on the behalf of the police. So I did not initiate it, but I do appreciate that it gives us something to enforce.
Yeah, so in the spirit of having something enforceable, I just wanted to add that I'm very much in favor of it. I mean, if I had the opportunity to travel a little bit in New England this summer into regions of the country that have like very, very, very little virus. I think at the time when I was in the state of Vermont, there was one person hospitalized in the area, like in the whole central part of the state. And you drive through little teeny tiny towns of 200, 300, 500, 900 people, and they have signs everywhere that say, "You are entering our town. We expect you to wear a mask here." Mm-hmm. And I just think that they're providing a good example of how to stay virus free by that kind of agreement. And I think I see this as an agreement among sensible people to help each other stay free of the virus. And it's not so different than requiring that a driver who's driving an automobile have insurance, or requiring that somebody not drive while drunk. I think we have rules that prohibit people from driving their cars when they're drunk, and I think that's a public safety measure. And I think a mask is very similar kind of public safety measure. I don't see it as a constitutional problem to require that people help each other stay healthy.
Yeah.
I'm finding when I walk around town, the ones I find the most non-compliant are the teenagers hanging with their friends. Mm-hmm. And they seem to be the ones who just will not wear a mask. And if it becomes wear a mask or get a fine, maybe it's something that can encourage them to do what they are supposed to do.
And I think it's important to note, at least as of a week ago, when I was reading the Commonwealth Health Department website, the cohort that's on that's increasing incidence of virus is among that cohort right now.
That's
They're
right.
The fastest growing group, between 12 and 20 years old.
Yeah, and the science seems to say that teenagers spread the virus at the same rate as adults. Okay, so Mona, is this something that you would support in the broad outline? I mean, we'd have to work out the details.
Yeah, I support it. I think the details are really important, and I haven't had a chance to read our solicitor's, discussion of that yet. But okay. I think it's not only in the public health and safety. The more people that start to take wearing masks seriously, the sooner our economy will recover. Mm-hmm. The sooner we'll begin to reduce the numbers and save lives. So I do think it's very important. I've seen it, just anecdotally, I've seen it done well when I was traveling in Massachusetts, and it wasn't through the whole town, but when you got to a certain part of the main street, there were very clear signs on all the blocks entering saying masks are mandatory from this block to this block. And I actually saw a police officer stop on their bike, talk to someone and remind them to wear their masks. And the couple said, "Oh, okay." And they put it on. The police officer kept going. It wasn't confrontational. It was, the police officer, I don't think really stayed around to wait for them to put the masks on, because the police officer would be coming back at, another way later. So I think it is important, because when I see, I think it is important when I see teams playing in the park and everybody sitting in the stands right next to each other and no one wearing masks, that's concerning. So I think there are certain areas in the town where signage would help, and so I think it's important to look at the details and how it would be enforced, but I think, I'm definitely in favor of it. So.
And just to add on, to tag on there, Mona, I was realizing as you were talking that there's, the enforcement really is the issue here. And so how do we create a policy that doesn't put all of the pressure on the police to enforce this, but that we provide adequate either flags or signage, or that we work with our business community to create a culture where this town wears masks, and so that we're not depending on police officers to actually be making stops, doing anything more than just a friendly, maybe a glance or a friendly suggestion. I think we should be very careful about that it's not too punitive, at least for maybe a first infraction, that we give the officers an opportunity to give a warning or two, or to use their discretion, so that they're not expected to give $100 or $300 fine or something right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Bob. And I think one of the goals could be to make for a more comfortable setting for doing business. I think some of our business owners are facing a very uncomfortable situation when someone comes into the store without a mask, and we do need to protect our whole community in this way. So briefly, could we put some kind of bounds around it, as we kind of guide the staff and the solicitor? Would we want to use our zoning code, for example, to define the areas where this would be enforced? So, like the two business districts. I mean, how else could we define? We're not planning to do this borough-wide. We're planning to do it in the downtown business district, and I assume Montgomery Avenue and the Iona, business corridor there.
I would also include the playground as an area, because we have a lot of teens that hang out down there, and where the kids are hanging out, they're not wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would include both playgrounds.
Okay. And then also, would you include under the train tunnels, the pedestrian tunnel and the driving tunnel?
Sure.
Okay, and any other areas, right? I assume that we're not seeking an ordinance that applies to the entire borough, but instead to the congested areas.
The areas where people hang out most.
Okay. Okay, and the solicitor had a couple other questions about, one of his big questions is about fines, and maybe that's something we just want to give some thought to. And, as he's working on that, he may have proposals for the whole council at our next meeting. But from what I can see, like State College is doing a $300 fine right off the bat. But we may not want to do that, right? Like Bob is saying, we might want to have something.
That's a deterrent.
Yeah, but that's
right up the bat, as long as you gave the officers discretion.
Right. I mean, so we don't need to do that. We can do, something graduated.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, so I guess what I would communicate then back to Aaron and to the solicitor is that this committee supports the mask ordinance in the broad outline, and we'd like to settle on the details in the next council meeting. Okay. Okay. So the very last item, and I think this will be brief, is just to review the setups that we have. We downtown, we have a setup where we're trying to support the restaurants in particular so that they can have sidewalk dining while also allowing for safe pedestrian passage. So what I am hearing from the NBA, from Ed Ridgway, is that they would like to support that effort. They would like two things. They would like no parking signs, and they would also like two portable ramps to provide ADA access from the street to the sidewalk. So I don't know, is this something that people
So
support?
I was under the impression that the signs were being worked out with the chief, and that the ramps were something that the NBA was going to provide. That was the impression I had.
Okay.
And that the setup that the borough already did its thing. We already agreed at the council meeting that the borough would provide barriers and barricades, but it was the business community that was going to do the setup and kind of the transformation of the street, so that the businesses who wanted that would be accountable to maintain that, and that it wasn't something it wasn't a level of service we were expecting of our staff. So so I thought, it seemed to me that the signage question, that was already being handled by the chief between and the mayor, and the ramps were something that the business community was funding. Am I mistaken?
Well, you may well be right, Bob. I know there's been some back and forth with Ed Ridgway, and I'm not exactly sure where things have landed, but is it true, I don't know if the mayor could speak to this, that can the no parking signs be provided to businesses that request them?
Well, we have given no parking signs to a number of the businesses. Ed Harmon gave a number of them for the no parking signs.
Okay.
And then Mayor, we did it was Saturday, right? You and I were in communication together where I
right,
had Officer Dan Dutton deliver a whole bunch to the Haverford Avenue Business Corridor, as well as Ryan Christophers.
Right, we got the bag for the meters.
Okay,
Right.
good. That was done Saturday. Okay, great.
Well, they were the no parking signs that were temporary. Just to let everybody know, our plastic meter bags, a lot of them were stolen.
Yeah, kids took them, I think.
Yeah, I think it was just juveniles in the area, kids, playing games. If we look at the meter situation, we should probably invest in some of the bags that we get that have the locking mechanism around the neck that can't be removed. And it says no parking. You can have it say whatever you want. And the idea is to obviously have people stop parking there about an hour before 5 o'clock to free as many spaces up as we possibly can along that pedestrian walkway next to the curb line.
Okay, so thank you.
Also, would it be possible to get some signs made, no parking between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. because that seems to be the time frames that we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
Maybe some regular signs to be attached to the posts.
Yeah, or we could, even the temporary ones we could have, we could just write on them. We could write them on them. We could write that on there too, Mayor.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. I thank you for doing that. I wasn't aware that was done this weekend. And so the ramps, this ADA question, are we saying that's up to the businesses to work out?
Well, I thought, Sean, we had talked about, looking into the borough getting some, because I thought they could be handy for the borough in a number of uses.
We did look into them, but they were $2,000 a piece. So we didn't really pull the trigger on that one right away. And
I thought I sent you something where it was like $300 a piece.
Just going on the info I've gotten from the Director of Public Works, and we continue to have some reservations about the method and technique of with the temporary barricades. This wasn't really a decision that was entirely endorsed by staff or for the technique that was employed. We still have some reservations about it as a really truly safe way to achieve our goals in the downtown area. So we've continued to look at that. So I think I feel like this is a situation where we're all talking about solutions and we need a little more coordination, because I recently just had a conversation with Ed Ridgway at the end of last week to get a summary of what was going on downtown, because I believe it was council had given, it was my charge, the charge to me to, by resolution in June, to head up these decisions. And so we've been actually committing a lot of time and thought to this at the staff level to come up with solutions that are safe, equitable. Of course, we can't make everything fair in real estate, and not expose the borough to any liability issues, and also to not create any barriers to persons who have accessibility issues. So we're still working through these problems. So I'm not so ready to have a conversation about solutions in this forum. I'd
Yeah.
like us maybe to agree on how we're going to make these decisions going forward, because I can't have conversations with staff and investigate solutions, talk to the traffic engineer, and then unilateral decisions are made about what gets done in various places in the borough. If that's the way we want to do it going forward, that's fine. And I've spoken to the council president about this issue as well, back in July 18th and 19th, those 2 days after our last council meeting, when we installed the solution for our downtown businesses. And I did follow up with a site visit and spoke at length to one of the business owners there to see how things were going. And I ran into you, Andrea, walking your dog.
Right.
I was glad to see she's doing well. So I'd like to remain engaged in this process and help lead up these solutions, if that's what you still want me to do. But it's difficult for me to operate when we're all making decisions about it, and I don't know where we are at in the process. So that's I have a little bit of process confusion.
Yeah.
John, it would be very helpful to me as a council member listening to the conversation if you could just, I almost heard like two different things. I almost heard you say two different things. First, I heard you say like, look, there's a process for this kind of research, investigation, problem solving that the staff are engaged in with the business community and the mayor, and that was an ongoing process. And I think it would be helpful to me as a council member if you could just sort of reiterate what that process is. And then the second thing I heard you say was, well, if you guys don't want to do it that way, that's fine. We'll do something else. But I guess it's my feeling that we should just stay engaged with the original process that you've already designed and already engaged, have invested time and energy in, working towards an iterative solution to the conditions that exist there in the downtown, which is what I've heard you say in the past, is that and so if you could just please restate what the process is so that we're all on the same page with that.
It's a confederacy of stakeholders that's facilitated by the borough manager, that includes borough council, the mayor, the chief of police, the director of public works, and the business association through their director and president, Ed Ridgway. So we're able to get feedback from the business association participants, also members of the community who want to leverage public resources for private businesses during this time can do so, can contact me directly. We've actually had a few businesses using the park for operations, and that's worked out fine. And that some of those can be handled just by direct communication between me and that person. And I like to document the arrangement so that there's a record of the things that we've agreed to. And that call it power or authority that council resolved for the borough manager to do expires the day before our September meeting. So maybe we should have a conversation at the September meeting about whether you want to extend that ability for the borough manager to act on council's behalf and make these arrangements. And it's an iterative process. So I've built relationships with some of the business owners. There's been some back and forth between myself and the owner of one of the food establishments downtown, where we've expanded their use in the rear parking area. But we did that, but we didn't do that unilaterally. We discussed the changes with the neighboring business owners. So we weren't creating an external, a negative externality that some other business owner had to deal with. Is it equal and fair? Nothing's equal and fair in real estate. It all depends on where you're located and where the sun shines and how big your property is. It's not, I can't make it 100% equal, but I can help make it fair.
Okay, well, given that you've got some
equal access,
given that you've got some kind of unilateral offerings on the part of some council members, and there was a conversation that took place at the last council meeting, and I'm not really sure where the mayor is on this, but I'm wondering if the process is still the vehicle for this discussion or not. And I'm just aware that there's there's been a lot of random discussion, and maybe it's not all as productive or as effective with the staff time as it could be. So I don't know, Mayor, is the original process that you set up and have engaged with, is it working for you?
Well, I mean, the original process, the trouble is, it wasn't work. It was, we were doing the best we could, but it wasn't working for all the business owners. And there was one business owner in particular who was kind of getting abusive, because he wasn't happy with what he was with not getting what he thought was fair. So that's when it kind of took a different turn, and he decided to approach a different councilwoman, and it started going through council and the business association. That's when, because he got kind of semi-abusive, they took over and just kind of forced it through.
Now I'm even more puzzled.
Yeah.
I just,
You know what?
it seems to me that there was a mechanism that for some reason it stopped working. So then we started having discussions about this in council. And I thought the whole purpose was to empower the individual business owners to work directly with the borough staff.
Right.
Make the public space work in service to their business, to their commerce, to the quality of life of the residents of the borough. And now I hear different people weighing in on this in different ways, and I'm wondering how do we expect our staff to make sense of this?
And it's a conundrum because the particular business owner was not happy with the way it was going, and went a different route, and that's how we ended up with what we ended up with.
Yeah. I mean, and then I hear stuff about ramps, and I guess I was in the meeting where I agreed we should have ramps, or I guess it was sort of a nodding of the heads or something, but I didn't have any notion that the ramps would be $2,000 a piece.
No, and I had forwarded some information that I had seen, where I had seen a commercial grade ramp for two for $600, which is very different than two for $4,000.
Yeah.
So, I don't know where the $2,000 ramp came from, because I had seen something else.
Mm-hmm. So Rob, are you bringing this up because there's not like somebody who's the captain of this particular?
Well, I think part of it is that
just the setup of our downtown.
We're continuing to have, it's like an unresolved problem, and council's only meeting once a month, so we're trying to, I guess I just want to call attention to it. And I hear what Sean's saying, it's like there are too many cooks in the kitchen right now, so
that seems evident. Yeah.
I'm happy to step out of the kitchen. I just, I want to make sure Sean and the mayor have what they need. It sounds like you do. I mean, if there's direction you can give council to kind of step away, maybe that would help,
I just don't want to be in a situation. It's untenable for me to be in a situation where, any particular, business owner is unhappy and starts abusing me, and it gets to be a point where I don't want to be downtown anymore because I'm getting screamed at.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't want to be in that position.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So yeah, I don't want you to be in that position. So the council needs to support you, and so I guess it's just a question of if there's a better way to do this. I mean, Sean outlined what we've agreed to as a method, and I don't know. Andrea, do you see a better way?
I'm fine giving it to, giving to Sean and letting, him trying to massage the different elements. I'm fine doing that, but, like I said, it's not fair to have everyone kind of, if they're not happy with it, go to me and just, make me the be all and end all for all this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one issue that I see that's like really is a health and public safety concern has to do with the closure of the parking area and the repurposing of the parking area as a pedestrian circulation. And early on in this, several months ago, early on in this discussion, we were told by our chief that really wasn't such a good idea. But then as a council, we kind of decided that the liability or the risk was okay with us. I gather that's kind of what was decided at that last meeting. And then the borough provided the barricades. And now I hear there's some dissatisfaction that the barricades aren't being like put up, that the cars aren't moving at 5 p.m. and the barricades then aren't being put up. And I guess I just like somehow feel like we're out ahead of ourselves here. Like we sort of started trying something without having all the pieces worked out. And I think the notion that we have an expectation that our professional staff are managing that, I think is wrong. I don't think that was the level of service that we were promising our business community, that they were going to manage the barricades and manage the parking, that we were going to say, have a parking controller down there or towing cars or something like that. So yeah. I think we maybe as a council need to come back and revisit that discussion and make sure we're sort of all on the same page. Mm-hmm. I mean, I kind of feel like the complexity comes in trying to open and close those parking spaces, and we'd be much better off just simply closing the whole lane of parking until the pandemic's over, and expanding the pedestrian circulation in the street.
You mean permanently?
Yes, until the pandemic's over.
Oh, I think that would be very hurtful to a number of different businesses on that.
I agree. I don't think that's equitable. The parking's being closed off to help restaurants, but other businesses that have been closed for a long time that are retail could be hurt by that. So I don't
absolutely. I think it's decimating to other businesses.
I see that. I think there's other ways that space could be used as a promenade, as a walking area, as a biking area, and that it just simply makes the downtown more livable for now, given that people are trying to social distance.
Well, so just
I do see a lot of parking spaces everywhere, all through town, because so many businesses like that brought in groups of people aren't even in operation, like the yoga garden that would bring in dozens and dozens of cars every hour on the hour.
I think
they're not in town at all.
Before you make a decision like that, I think you need to talk to all the other businesses, because
I'm not making any decisions. Yeah. I'm just giving a point of view, which is that it might simplify the friction that we're experiencing around.
I actually think would make it worse. I think the American Family Market has said to me directly that would be hurtful to them.
Yeah, just to back up, I think what brought this to a head was the stealing of the bags over the meters, because then we had people parking in the 5 to 9 time, and that's why the businesses were requesting the no parking.
So can we get the kind of bags that you lock over the meter head? I mean, that's what most communities have. So they get, they have their grommeted bag and they have a little lock on, a little tiny padlock on it.
But yeah, and we used to have them here, just to let you know. I didn't know if they were, this is John, I didn't know if they were much use, but they should, we should probably look at investing in them so this way they can't be stolen. It'll help us out a little bit more. Before I jump off, I just do want to show some support to Sean Metrick's point of view. We still do have some concerns about the safety along that area. That hasn't gone away. Just from a police chief and EMC perspective, I'm always worried about a vehicle-borne attack, unfortunately, in this day and age where there is no cars there, there is no barrier there anymore, there's no Jersey barriers or something more permanent. Those barricades are like toothpicks, and if someone wanted to ram a vehicle up onto that sidewalk and, God forbid, hurt a whole bunch of people that were outside dining, it would be, absolutely horrible. So I do have my worries, and I do echo Sean's concerns along those lines. That being said, I don't know if anybody saw the video up in Brooklyn. There was a luncheonette or an eatery where someone just simply lost control of a car and they popped the curb. And thank God people weren't hurt seriously, but it is a possibility. It is there. It is a scenario. Now I understood, that people wanted to try something to help the businesses. It wasn't necessarily disagreeing with me or anybody on professional staff that was trying to, facilitate some type of, promotion of helping the businesses. And we were on the same page with that. We want to try to make sure that everybody goes back up to where they were before, to return to a sense of normalcy, make businesses whole. That's all understood. I was just worried from a public safety perspective, and I do echo Sean's concerns in that area. I still drive by during those times, and believe me, I have my worries.
Mm-hmm. So okay, so we're about out of time. I would say, this is unfortunately a balancing act, right? We want to support our businesses, and we want it to be done in a safe way, and it's not obvious what to do. Like Sean is saying, it's iterative. We have to keep revisiting and tweaking. The businesses have different needs, like Andrea is saying. So I guess what we want to do is kind of stick with our plan, where Sean is serving as a kind of convener, I guess, of different interest groups. While, as Bob is saying, not promising, we're not promising, borough staff time per se. We're simply trying to coordinate public spaces. So I guess this will be a conversation that will continue. We don't have an easy answer to it for now, but I would say to Sean and Andrea and Bob as vice president, if you can see a better way for us to coordinate, between the council's interests and the business interests or the staff, let's give that some thought. We don't want the mayor to be in an uncomfortable position. So I'm on the same page in what we want, but I'm not exactly sure how to get there. So we'll have to pick this up, I think, with the whole council when we meet later this month.
I think I'm kind of in favor of following staff recommendations on this and not revisiting it at every single council meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we could do that. That could be a recommendation. Bob, would you?
I agree with you, Mona. I think we need to talk with some of our colleagues about that.
And I think too, just to
they don't necessarily agree with that, and I think so. That's something we should talk about with the full council. Really, I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. And Sean.
Yeah, and to fill in the gap, and Andrea, thank you for letting me know that there's cheaper ramps out there. If I come up with a decision where I'm saying, where I have to figure out like, oh, okay, I don't have funds at my discretion as borough manager to spend on equipment, then yeah, I do have to bring that piece of the puzzle to borough council. I just can't go and spend $4,000 on infrastructure without that being pre-authorized. That would be inappropriate. So there is going to be a little bit of, it's not like you're never going to be in touch with what's going on. We're going to be always in this process of refiguring it out as time goes on. And what is it going to look like in the wintertime? You're not going to have a lot of outdoor dining in the wintertime, or maybe some people are going to want to figure out some way to have heated seating areas. And we're going to have a whole new host of issues to think through. But we will continue to surface those issues that we need to bring to council's attention when we meet. But I agree, we don't have to have a dissertation on downtown, whether it's downtown or the park or any one of our public facilities. Every time we meet, we can handle that and take away some of the complication.
Right.
Okay, that's good then. We'll let that be our recommendation from the committee to the council, and the three of us as council members here can communicate that to our colleagues. And hopefully this will be a more streamlined process then, with really one cook in the kitchen.
All right.
Okay,
I
thank
wonder,
you.
Andrea, if you have any thoughts about how we can help you with, with some of the abuse that you're taking, or
Well, I
has
think
to do with the rules that they're not following or the agreements they're not following. If there's some way we can help you in.
now I think what's happening is the business owners are frustrated, and they're frustrated because of a virus that none of us can control. And so it's coming out in different ways. And I happen to be downtown, almost every day, and so it just there's one in particular that has kind of not been good, but he's not the only one. There's others that have they're just angry, and they're looking for someone to take their anger out on, and I'm not their shrink, and I really wish they wouldn't do that. And it's just it was an issue.
Well, if it would help for the council to issue, I don't know if it's a formal resolution, but at least sort of a statement of like a memorandum that we all agree that, the public space can be used in X, Y, and Z following ways, and that these certain businesses are going to use these spaces, but not these spaces, and these businesses are going to use these spaces, but not these spaces. I mean, if there's some way of outlining generally what
I don't know that
with these individual business, so that it takes the onus off of you or of or an individual staff member to say enforce what it is, but just to say this is what we've agreed on as a community will work for us, and and then you're done.
I'm not sure that would be helpful. So at this point, I think just let it. Things have quieted down, and I would let sleeping dogs lie for that moment, for the moment.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just please be in touch. We do want to support you, Andrea.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I appreciate this. I think it's a sign of a good functioning committee when people can kind of air their grievances, and it makes for a better working relationship. When we can hear honestly that one way is not working, and we need to kind of course correct. So
Okay.
hopefully this will make it easier for Sean. Okay, so
every health and public safety meeting is Festivus.
right. Yeah. All right. Well,
The airing of grievances.
thank you all so much, and I wish you all good health. And
Festivus for the rest of us.
That's right. We'll all go watch some.
Mona's trying to say something.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I promise it's not a long drawn out thing. I keep forgetting and then remembering. I just wanted to ask at a meeting, Chief Gallagher is our permanent appointed EMC, Emergency Management Coordinator. Did you, and I think we left it where Sean and the chief would work together to appoint a deputy. Do you need anything from the Public Health and Safety Committee for that, or you'll let us know if you do?
Yeah,
is that where we all are?
I discussed this with Sean, and I know that Sean and John will attend to this.
Okay.
It's not, I think, on the front burner at the moment, but that I think as a committee, we're comfortable, right? We're comfortable with the manager and the chief appointing a deputy.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
No, thank you for reminding me, Mona, and we certainly could have used one yesterday.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you all. We'll end our meeting for now, and I will see you all in a couple weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Stay well.
Good night.